Welcome to Washington Football Week with your host, one half of that dynamic duo, Sean Spencer, and South Carolina's finest, Will Kramer.
Don't play us if you're undefeated.
Where we celebrate past success while looking to a bright future. There's a youth movement in Washington, and they're ready to take the reins. Led by firefighters.
Play aggressive.
It's a new day. New dawn. No longer the laughing stock. It's time to take them.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy back again, Sean Spencer, one half of that dynamic duo that is Let's Talk Football, and one half of that terrific tag team that is Washington Football Weekly. You know what day it is. It's Hump Day. Happy Wednesday, everybody. We are back to you with this offseason. And look, before I go any further, you know I got to see my guy, South Carolina's finest. And South Carolina's finest, Will Kramer. What up, Will?
Oh, what's going on, Sean? How we doing today?
Oh, we are good. It's nice. It's 60 degrees outside. Can put on my little windbreaker. You noticed the new one?
That's a beauty. That's beauty. You got great logo. The logo that needs to come back.
Come on.
But that thing is nice.
Come on. I love it. Shout out to my pseudo sister Jen Allen. Got this for me for Christmas. Said she saw it and thought of me. She said, I hope it's the right size. I said it's perfect. It is perfect. So absolutely love this. Will, man, 60 and sunny, man. How are things in South Carolina?
Do you understand why I moved here?
Yeah, for this weather.
This is glorious. Yeah, we talked in the low 70s, so still very, very nice, very, very comfortable. It just feels nice. We walked outside in the evening, and you didn't have to have a coat on. Like it's great.
Yes. And you want to know what else is great, ladies and gentlemen? Well, not necessarily for us. Our season is over, but it is playoff time in the NFL. It's bowl season, and those playoffs are going. So much football. It is bittersweet. It always is, because as we know, we got a month and a half, and football's gone a month. Actually,
it's a month
and a week, and then we're back to the off season. But I'm not gonna be somber, because I got something that I'm so excited about, and I wanted to talk to you about it real quick. Those of you that don't know, Will and I are in a group chat. And every once in a while, will tell us, about his boys watching football. And you were telling us Patrick is watching old games and Xbox Simulation. What?
Yes.
I love it.
I mean, he loves watching the highlights after.
Yes.
So since he doesn't get to watch any of the night games, he wants to watch the very next day. He watches Monday Night Football highlights. He wants Sunday Night Football. Like, he was watching the Ravens-Steelers game on Monday morning. But he was home Monday, and I had a couple appointments that I had to do for work, so I let him watch some TV and I let him put on YouTube. And next thing you know, I listen up and I'm like, that's kind of interesting. And he's talking about these game matchups, and I look, I'm like, he's watching somebody simulate NCAA football 25 and come up with an entire league and verses, and he's getting into it. He's like, Virginia Tech just lost and they've been eliminated.
Yeah.
I was like, what? And I was like, you got to change the channel. And
I love it.
He's like, I like this. I go, this is not real though. No, I'm not letting you watch a kid simulate video games.
Yes. That is little Sean Spencer right there. That's what I do, right?
I read this group chat you got going on with the game, and I'm like, I don't know what these guys are talking about.
Let's go.
Simulating, and I'm playing with Toledo. I'm like, get out of here.
That's right. Those Golden Rockets. That's right. 6-1. All right, we're bowl eligible. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. The youth, we're raising them up the right way. My God, man.
Yeah.
Oh man. But look, like we alluded to earlier, the season for Washington is in the books. Another season, and we are back to the 4-13 that we were 2 years ago.
We're in familiar territory.
Yeah. That's the
Waiting on
thing.
this offseason.
We're
Curious
used
how
to
the
this,
offseason goes.
right? I feel like we've been able to get excited about the offseason again. Obviously, we know how last offseason went, but with it being the end of the season, that means coaches are getting their notices to go. We've seen it all around the league. Pete Carroll gets fired with the Raiders, Stefanski with the Browns, even Harbaugh right up 95 and Baltimore after they failed to make the playoffs. So no team is immune to this. Washington clearly is not, and it has come out. We have parted ways with Kliff Kingsbury, our offensive coordinator, and Joe Whit Jr., our defensive coordinator. Guess my first question is: are you surprised, Will?
Of course, not with Joe. We knew that was coming. I wasn't. I was wondering what was going to happen with the Diana Rossini reports that there was some friction. Seeing how many coaching opportunities there are, and I don't know if the Steelers lose on Monday, could that be an option? If the Bills lose, could that be an option? I kind of wondered if this would be a chance for Kliff to get a head coaching job. I think there's a couple locations, Tennessee with Cam Ward, Baltimore with Lamar, potentially Vegas if Dante Moore comes out into the draft, that could fit him as a head coach in the offense that he wants to do. So I sort of also was somewhat resigned that he could get a head coaching job, but I did not see so quickly there being this parting of ways, or I'm just going to say he got fired. And so I am a little bit surprised by this, and I'm surprised and I'm a little bit disappointed. How are you feeling?
I have always had mixed feelings about Kliff. Obviously, we know his success. We know what type of quarterbacks he works with. So that obviously gave us a lot of excitement when we got his type of quarterback in Jaden Daniels. And last year was everything that we could have imagined. But when you look at this year, and obviously he had to deal with a lot of injuries, it kind of makes you go back to last year and look. There was a point where the offense did kind of stall. We went into this 3-game losing streak. I think it was like the Steelers, the Ravens, and like Dallas, where it kind of seemed like the offense was stuck in the mud a little bit. Obviously we had a little bit of the injury, but I remember one of my Cardinals fans hit me up and he said, "Yeah, it's about that time in the season for Kliff, where he's rigid, he's stuck in his ways, and he's not changing it. It's going to work. It's going to work. If it doesn't, it doesn't." And that to me there was a lot of times where I know you and I were talking, we were just frustrated. We're just like, come on, man. Like we got to figure this. Like we should be able to do this. And I wonder, especially with some of the fans, if last year kind of gave us a false sense of how this offense can run. And then when you see this year, obviously, like I mentioned, the injuries were a big deal, but still, we could not get a running game with a couple extra pieces. We weren't able to establish. We didn't switch. There was no adjustments. When the people got hurt, it was just like you thought you can plug somebody else in to do that exact role. There was a lot of things about him that frustrated me. So I'm not surprised with that being said, but some reason I thought he was going to get a third year. You and I had talked about it. We thought maybe one more year with Jaden, get Jaden healthy again. Let's see if they can, rekindle that magic they had last year. But I guess they decided it was time to move on. And to that point, Will, I've heard a lot of things. What's up, Anthony? What's on, Cameron? I've heard that there was a little bit of a thought that maybe Kliff was stuck in his ways, or I listened to the Locked On podcast, and phrase that he used was a little hard headed potentially. Like, this is what we're doing, and it's not as much, I'm going to scheme around the players. It's this is what I run, fit it and fit some guys in. What did you think about his play calling and hard headed? You think that's harsh, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there are things we can be critical of. I think the little bit like what your Cardinals fan said was correct, where he's not known as a in-game adjuster. And there were moments this season where, when you talk about the game plan, there are times when you wonder, what is he doing here? Like against Minnesota, even though the season's out of gone at that point, we run the ball. Rodriguez is tearing them up. We get to the 2 and we throw it 3 times from the 2-yard line. And this is with Jaden at that time. That was Jaden's return game back, and you're throwing it with him. Now, Debo did drop the touchdown pass, so you could, Kliff could say he was open. He just didn't catch it. But it was just one of these things where it's like, why are you not sticking with what's working? In the 2 years that he's been in DC, our running game has been absolute crap. Yeah. There are some stats out there that show we between last year and this year, we have very similar run amounts, and we're averaging about 130 yards a game as a team. But if you take away Jaden out of that mix, the running back numbers drop significantly.
Right.
So, we have to say there's a concern here. What are these guys doing trying to take this over into a Falcons chat here? Fellas,
You see this?
I am. So, like, from a standpoint of where things were not going well, for the last 2 years, we haven't had a good run game. When Austin Eckler gets hurt, it all goes to junk. My concern, and this is where I'm like really, really bummed right now, is you are taking away all of Jaden's support cast. So when he now goes into year 3, which the team is going to be under a lot of pressure to win next year. Dan Quinn is going to be under pressure. He better get these coordinator hires right, or he's going to get fired. Yeah. You're going to have Jaden having to learn a new offense. And wherever Kliff goes, he's probably taking David Rye, the tight ends coach, with him. He could be taking David Blau with him. Jaden already lost quarterbacks coach Tavita Pritchard. He's now at Stanford. So you're talking now of the guys who've been in his ears. Marcus Mariota is probably going to go wherever Kliff goes. Some of his most close confidence of the last 2 years are all going to be gone, and we are starting fresh on offense. That's my biggest panic button moment about this situation.
Yeah, and it just it begs you to sit there and wonder who are they going to bring in, because like you said, you're going to need to fill many spots, not just this OC, but obviously the QB coach, obviously kind of the supporting cast. You talked about O-line's coach a little bit. We don't know what's going to happen there, but you're going to need to fill these pieces. And I hate this for a young quarterback to now have to then go and switch things up to somebody, potentially learn something completely new. Because we've already seen, yes, there were some things that he learned. He got, I think, that love of the game by having it taken from him, not being able to play as much. So he's going to, that's going to help him. And then obviously getting a view of the game from the sidelines, not being in it, but seeing it from a different perspective, that can only help him. But I mean, I think that's where the buck stops with any kind of progress that Jaden made. And I just don't think switching up is going to, that's not going to do anything but be detrimental for his progress. So that, to me, I'm right there with you on that one. It's frustrating to see, because even with the Mariota part, if potentially he leaves, I mean, there's your in-house coach, there's your on the field coach that you have over there. So you are literally stripping everything away from Jaden, and we've seen what this does to young quarterbacks. So that for me is that's killer. That's not something we need right now, especially like to your point when Dan Quinn potentially is on that hot seat as well.
Right. What do you think about on Sunday night? Jaden's mom tweets out JD5 KK year 3. Like all in, excited, all that.
I remember you sent me that.
Jaden gets interviewed on Monday and says, "I love Kliff. I love working with him. He gives me the freedom to pick plays and work stuff I like." And now Tuesday, he's fired.
Honestly,
what do you think about the organization right now with all that?
Part of me, and I said this to you before, and I said this to somebody else, part of me thinks this was one of the necessary things where they're like, all right, Quinn, it's either them or you, because you brought these guys in here and you stuck with these guys. And the same group that had success last year looked awful this year. So, he's going to have to figure it out. And the other potential that Kliff might want to go coach somewhere else. But it just feels off like that. The way that they were talking, kind of even in the press conference, when they even asked Kliff, well, what do you think about your play calling, and do you think it needs to be adjusted or anything like that? And he basically said, this is what I call, this is what's worked elsewhere, so this is what I'm going to go with. And we've seen situations where OCs, we talk about Texas, Sarkisian, everybody talks about, oh, do you think it's time for you to give up the play calling? This is, in his mind, what got him to this place. Yes. So and part of me is like, yes, you have to stand strong. This is who you are. This is what you are. But at the same time, you just wonder how much of it is Kliff, this is my offense, this is what I do, so this is where I'm going to put people. And then from there, let's see, okay, what do you do well with? You know what I mean? As opposed to challenging Jaden to be like, all right, I need you to do this. I need you to learn how to do this. It's more of, okay, this is my playbook. Which plays do you like in this? Because then you're doing the same thing. You're not being allowed to evolve. You're just saying, going back to NCAA, you're picking your favorite plays and just running them over and over and over. This is the NFL. Teams have footage. They have film on that. They're going to pick up on that. You can't just continue to do that type of stuff. So I think that definitely could have hurt Kliff. But I also think that a lot of other people saw that. The way that this year went, and I know the injuries have been a problem, but still, there's a lot of times in there where you're just sitting there like, what did I tell you all year? Third down, 3rd and 1, and we're in the gun. Like, you got to get to a point where it's just like, no, I formation, Rodriguez, get the yard, just like your point at the goal line. How many times did we run the pass at the goal line? I really feel like there was a little friction in-house, but I feel like everybody wanted to be cool in front of the camera. You know what I mean? We're not going to air this whole thing out in front of the camera, but at the same time, the writing's been on the wall,
I definitely agree with what you said, how they are not going to speak out and let people know some things. It's kind of interesting. Looking at some of the run stats, like we do run the ball a decent amount, but he runs it on first down, like primarily. So it's like you're talking about the run game. It can kind of be predictable. You mentioned the offense at times really did not look good. Go look back to that Green Bay game. We are healthy in that game. We looked awful. The offense was terrible. We couldn't get the ball to Terry. And so, I think that really was a situation where you said, I do believe in year 2, the NFL did some film watching. They knew Jaden didn't have nearly the same amount of success scrambling because everybody knows he likes to scramble to his right. So they spy and bring someone to shadow over to his right. And now there's someone there that wasn't there in 2024, that he was able to get a more yardage. So I think there were some things that were, not working. Kliff runs the no huddle to like the amount of 68% of the time. And the next closest NFL team is in the 30s. So that's a big deal. Like, why are you so far ahead? So I think these are some questions that we can have about things. But my only thought about this is exactly what you've been saying, who Kliff is. Dan Quinn knew what he was doing when he brought him in. Kliff is who he is.
Right.
Is he arrogant? Potentially. Does he have the mindset of, well, I became a college head coach running in this way. I became an NFL head coach. And now I'm picking between 2 teams right now that want me to be their offensive coordinator to be this way. So does he have a reason to be arrogant? Potentially, but this is how he got there. But Dan Quinn, if the rumors are true that you're coming out saying you wanted him to run the ball more, you knew this when you hired him. So there's also a concern for me saying after in your second go around as a head coach, after 2 years, you have fired your 2 coordinators. What does that say about your decision-making process?
Exactly. And that's the part that's frustrating. That's why, for me, it kind of felt like they might have gone to Dan and been like, this is under your watch. this is under your watch because there was a lot of stuff, and nobody was going to get rid of some of these guys a year ago, but to somebody we're about to talk about with Joe Whit Jr., that we saw that in the championship game. We saw that in a number of games last year where it's kind of like, how long are you going to let this go, Dan? Like, how long? Like, it's really coming on you right now. So I respect their decorum and the way they did it. And, oh, yeah, I love him. He's great. Everything's cool. But at the same time, we all kind of were keeping our eyes on Kliff and because we saw there was no progression, there's no improvement. Now let me ask you this, because, and this is going to be a big part when we talk about Joe Whit Jr., how much of a pass, if you will you give Kliff because of the injuries? Obviously, you had Eckler go down. Obviously, Terry was out most of the year. Noah Brown was he wasn't in there most of the time. He loses McCaffrey. And then obviously Jaden gets hurt. How much are you going to give him a pass on that? Or is it, I mean, I know everybody says next man up, but realistically, next man up is not, that doesn't work like everybody thinks it does. So how much of a pass are you going to give him for those injuries?
Huge pass. I think actually Kliff actually showed that he's a good offensive mind. That the fact that he actually moved the ball with Mariota, we went from being like the number 5 offense to like 16th this year, which the fact that we were like half of the league based on what I felt when watching the games, I was shocked to see that like the numbers played out that way. And I don't think that's just because it's ended. I don't remember us having end of the game type stats, like we've had like on the Kirk Cousins days where he would get a bunch of, another touchdown or two in the fourth quarter when we've already lost. So I think Kliff is absolutely, like, he gets the pass on the injuries this year. When you look at the weapons, he's the only one that spoke up publicly about the fact that we didn't have guys in August. August 16th, he said, we need Terry on grass to get ready for this season. And Adam Peters was doing this. I'm going to hold my language on this for it, but they were having their impasse. And the organization and Terry could not get together, and Terry had an absolutely lost season this year. Was it because of training camp? Who knows? Noah Brown is injured in training camp, which means we are out there in August in training camp with Debo playing our number 1 wide receiver, which he's not, and Luke and Jalen Lane as your next best receivers, and a bunch of undrafted guys and guys by the name of Ja'Cory Brooks being out there, playing. Do you think Jaden's going to develop any type of trust or rhythm with these guys? And Kliff is the only person who spoke up and said, what are we doing here? So by all means, and then we got into the season and his best running back, Austin Eckler, goes down in week 2. And we saw it last year. And, we saw, Austin made enough plays against the Giants. Yes, they're not very good, but the Giants defense at that time was, completely healthy, that the offense was moving a little bit against them. Bill had a great game against the Giants. He had over 70 or 80 yards. And then they just started to unravel, and Terry gets hurt, and Noah Brown never gets back. And we go into the Dallas game, and we don't have anybody. Our top 3 receivers aren't there. Like, nobody. No one's going to be open for when you're having to cover Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey. These guys can't get open. It's easy to scheme against them. So I absolutely give him a this year pass on, like, you can't evaluate and criticize him based on the statistics and everything, what he was given out there. Yeah. But, if the idea is that you don't feel that this is the guy that is going to get you further, I guess my thing is to say you probably could get better at offensive coordinator. Like there could be some names that come out here. We could also get a lot worse at offensive quarterback. Like, this is a very risky decision by Dan Quinn and Adam Peters to get rid of him. It's very risky.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. At least on defense, we know that with Joe Whit gone, Dan Quinn can step in, and he does this. This is what he does, so you feel comfortable there. But now with OC, you see Tavita Pritchard. You see potentially Anthony Lynn, you were talking about, Kliff. You are totally resetting this young quarterback, and that is not something I'm looking forward to.
No.
Yep.
Well, you know what's kind of interesting is Dan Quinn, when he was hired as head coach, he talked about who he could bring in as assistants and as part of the staff. And we were so excited in year one seeing Ken Norton Jr. and the dude from the 49ers on the line, Daryl Tapp. And then we got Kliff and we got Tavita and Blau and Anthony Lynn and Brian Johnson, all this kind of stuff. Well, we're at a point where we're talking here where like all of that, especially offensively, could get blown up. And it's like part of the reason he talked about being so interested or like Dan Quinn wanted to make sure that he had guys behind there that if someone like Kliff left, he would have people who could step up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all those guys may go with Kliff.
Yeah,
so you're about to have your entire offensive coaching staff get detonated.
Yeah. So this will be key. This is going to be huge. This is a major offseason for Dan, too. He needs to not only address these holes now that are on the team, but then also there's pieces that we need to pick up. And, he's got to build up a roster. So the timing of this is it's not good. You know what I mean? But I'm glad we can get ahead of the game right now. But it does look like things in-house were amicable. There was a split was amicable. It seems like they seem to be okay, at least in the public eye. So I'm okay with that. Obviously, we know that, like you alluded to, Kliff might potentially have some, OC opportunities, or I know head coach opportunities available to him. But it's going to be interesting. Nate, what else? Nate said I'll criticize him on regard because of the fact that he went away from B-Rob, Eckler, JCM, Rodriguez, Amber Nichols. Who was number one after the injury?
I'm not sure there was a number one before the injury. If you look at all those guys, Eckler was seemed to be the most effective player out there within the scheme. His ability to catch the probably pass block as well. There probably was a lot of trust there, as well as Austin Eckler just had this ability to like twist his body when he had the ball and get extra yardage and get first down. So, I really felt like that was a big loss. But at the same time, I think all of us were like, is he going to be good for 17 games? Can he play 19, 20 in a season? I don't know if he can type stuff.
Right.
But part of it is like, let's look at that running back room. Whose jersey are you buying of that running back room?
Nobody.
Now,
as y'all know, I would have bought my guy, B-Rob. Many men. That was my guy. But even to your point, even last year, B-Rob and Eckler was 1-2 back. There was B-Rob who was the ground and pound. Eckler was the guy that gets you in space. This year, clearly, we were going by running back by committee. You know what I mean? Even with Eckler was just the most talented. He can just do the most. But he wasn't the bell cow. You know what I mean? That's why we had how early did they try to get JCM up there and get those snaps and whatnot? So we didn't have that. And one wonders, going back to Kliff, we knew coming in, Kliff said he's running the air raid. And he threw in a couple runs, and obviously ran a lot with Jaden when he had that. But to your point, when Jaden wasn't running, then the running game was literally it was obsolete. It was done. So you wonder how much, especially hearing that Dan Quinn saying run more, you wonder how much run that he even wanted to do in the first place. You know what I mean? It just seemed like he wanted to air it out.
I ran it 3 drives ago, one time. I ran the ball.
Right. and that's why the question is kind of off-putting because of the fact that I don't know how much he really wanted to do that. And we've started questioning towards the end of the year Nate's favorite phrase, what's our identity? Because we know ourselves, and has always been, Washington is a running team. We run, we play action off the pass. Jaden had a lot of success this year when we had a positive run game. Then that could get him going. Then that could open the pass game up. You know what I mean? I really feel like from watching Kliff over the last 2 years, it was hard for him to really commit to the run because he's so used to that air raid, throw it all over the place. But if you don't have that running game, if you cannot, chew the clock, especially if you have a lead or something like that, you're not going to be successful in the NFL.
Right. You know, one thing I'm a little bit concerned about this whole like reset that we're doing too is the team prides itself in the off season and free agency, and especially in the draft, of letting their coaches have a say in what they want on offense.
Mm-hmm.
When you bring in a new offensive coordinator, you're bringing in a new scheme. Who's to say that, you know, the last two drafts aren't going to have the players that they need, you know, whether it's along the offensive line. Like everyone's saying you need to re-sign and extend Tunsil. What if this offensive lineman coach wants a more maulers and Tunsil's not a mauler? You know, like this that's what I'm saying. This is so risky because this team has been built for 2 years and you just
blew it up.
So, hey, did Nate say he wants to blow it up? Nate, they did it. They didn't do it with the roster right now, but everything on your team so far.
Yeah, they definitely blew this thing up.
Yeah, and I think they will re-sign Tunsil. I mean, actually, Adam Peters said it, which he never says. But I'm just throwing out some hypotheticals out there of like this is why I'm in panic mode right now.
Kliff is like avocado. You got to use it quick.
There could be some truth to that. I mean, they're really. I mean, he catches lightning in a bottle quickly. He did that with Kyler. Kyler had a great like first season, and then it kind of went sideways. Maybe you know, and who knows? Maybe this is what Dan Quinn saw. He's like, I'm going to give him a chance, but when things start to go down, I'm cutting him loose. And maybe Dan Quinn is the smart one of the room, you know, out here. I don't know. But yeah,
I never forget. When we first got Kliff, the first thing I thought was that one season that Arizona started off, I think like 8-0, best team in the NFL, we're unstoppable and all this stuff, and they completely fell off after that. That is the image I had of Kliff. So I was somewhat excited that he was in-house, but I was like, what's he gonna do? Do?
Absolutely. I know I tried to get Kyler Murray on my fantasy team for a couple of years, and I couldn't get it because everyone wanted him.
Everybody had him. You talked about potentially in-house. I know everybody's gone, so you know who knows who's gonna leave with Kliff and everything like that. Who are you thinking? Do you think it's gonna be an in-house hire for OC, or would you go out-house? Would you go somewhere else?
From what I've been hearing so far, they're probably looking to bring in someone from the outside. You know, there is the experienced guy of Anthony Lynn, who is our run game coordinator. You know, Brian Johnson, the pass game coordinator, has been an offense coordinator at Philadelphia for 1 year, and then they fired him. But he got the job. He was a well-known guy coming out of college. And then David Blau is the current quarterbacks coach. He was our assistant quarterbacks coach, but he's actually getting an interview with the Detroit Lions as their OC. He would be a kind of early promotion, I would say. So I don't necessarily think that in-house is where they're trying to go. I mean, there is a lot of wishes to go through that Shanahan-McVay tree. And Anthony Lynn would come from that. I mean, that's where coming from San Francisco, he was a part of their teams when they had, some great running backs when they had that trio with like Raheem Mostert and a couple other guys where it's like, and they just kind of keep plugging guys in and they all kind of run the same,
exactly.
And so there could be something. I mean, Anthony Lynn's been a head coach before. He's been an offensive coordinator. But I think on both situations right now, the initial thoughts are they're looking outside of the organization.
Right. And I think this is a perfect point by Jay Red to what we were talking about. He said, I would imagine the next coach would be run heavy and not necessarily with J85, but like an old school Riggins style play action offense. You know, I wouldn't necessarily go to Riggins run, but maybe early 90s like Ernest Biner, where it was.
Jay's just saying that because he remembers when Don Bro came back in 2004 and how boring our offensive was. Yeah. And then Joe Gibbs freaked out and he went out and got Al Saunders. It all went down because he was like, well, Dallas had no problem with that defense. You guys kept running the same motion you did in the 80s. We knew exactly how to defend this.
The same plays. 3rd and 5. We're gonna run a counter tray.
Right, counter tray is coming.
Doesn't work.
Let's have the H-back tight end go in motion, and then we'll run to the side. Now let's go with what Nate's saying because this is very intriguing what he's talking about here.
No, I would like this. We know what he's been able to do. We know that kind of offense. over there with Tua and Miami. And I said this to you when you mentioned to me earlier today. I said, yeah, I mean, I like McDaniel, but can we get him a package deal with Tyreek?
Right.
We can
Sure.
let's bring Tyreek in here
Why
doing
not?
number 2. Come on now. But what do you think realistically? Because it looks like the writing's on the wall for him in Miami. Would you try to make that move? Would you pursue him at OC?
Oh my gosh, yes. Mike McDaniel, I think, would be incredible to work with Jaden Daniels. I mean, I think look at what he did with Tua initially, and I mean that offense. Do you still remember that time they came to DC and they did the little, they were like in the end zone, they were rolling.
Yeah, they had the choreographed dance moves on us. Yeah, I remember that.
We could not stop that offense, and Tua looked incredible. So yeah, no, absolutely. Mike McDaniel, I would totally. I kind of wonder, would he have to go back to being an OC? I mean, I kind of look at it from a standpoint of a McDaniel type, maybe what I would prefer. If we are going to have to, or we've blown this all up, if we're going to have to change everything up for Jaden, now going in his 3rd year and kind of looking at his contract, year 3 and 4 are really, really important before things start escalating. I want someone right now. I would feel more comfortable with someone who's been there before.
Right.
You're looking at a Mike McDaniel, who he got his head coach job because of what he did in San Francisco and then what he did in Miami. You look at a Brian Dable, who got it coming from Buffalo. Now, gotta get a little nervous here because there's a trend here with Dable, and that's his quarterbacks are supposed to plow into defenders. Josh Allen's got a body that can handle it, but Jackson Dart has already had how many concussions in year 1?
Right.
But Dable, is someone who, he got his head coaching job because of the work he did with Josh Allen. I saw a name mentioned, which I was like, really? I'll take it. Clint Kubiak over there in Seattle, who also was in New Orleans. Like, he's working with Sam Darnold, who's a little different style quarterback, but they've had the experience of play calling. Versus if you bring in someone off the Shanahan tree, like a Mike LaFleur, all right, the name makes you get interested. There's another guy on the Rams called Nate Shielchase. A young guy, like, younger than 35 years old, but it's no different than when the Falcons hired Zach Robinson. Did it work out there? This was his first time calling plays. And is that what Dan Quinn needs to be doing in year 3?
Right.
Like, I don't want to lose David Blau out of the building, but can Dan Quinn afford to give his 3rd year of coaching to David Blau and say, let's have you run our offense? That's, again, risky, this entire thing.
Exactly. And J. Red said, can McDaniel craft JD5's safe offense? Because he's been getting Tua killed. Well, one thing I will say, we know Jaden probably has a little more wheels than Tua, but I also know that Jaden this year, one of the things he learned is how to kind of be safer, or tried to be safer. So that would be something that interesting. LaFleur is a name I also had kind of heard that they might be kind of moving on from him and stuff like that. Look, I echo your sentiments. At the end of the day, whoever they bring in, I need them working with Jaden early, and hopefully they don't have to adjust too much, or it's not too much of a learning curve for him to where he loses out on another year. And then obviously, potentially Dan Quinn goes if we don't have a good year. And then you're talking about totally resetting the entire system.
Right.
And then we're really rebuilding. So,
it's something for us to think about here that, it could also be I need to calm down. Like, I don't need to panic over this. Jaden came in as a rookie and picked up Kliff's offense his very first year.
Yeah.
He's going to now he's a professional. Yeah. He's done this before. He did it at LSU when he came from Arizona State.
Right.
Is it possible? Absolutely. There is something to say that Dan Quinn could bring in other guys. Like, I think when Nate's talking about the baby commander coaches, I think he's referring to the baby Redskin coaches, where like, what if you brought in a Mike McDaniel and Bobby Slowick was the quarterback's coach? There's 2 guys who've been with us as the Redskins. Hey, Indian Head hat, and have directed, offenses. Like, so could we be a stronger unit going into next season? Absolutely. So I probably need to cool the jets a little bit, but doggone it, I am nervous.
Look, this is week 1 of the offseason, okay?
Yeah,
we're going to be a little outlandish. It's okay.
I don't want this joke, Sean.
I don't either.
Be different.
I don't either. And we are going to address this a little bit later. But before we address that, there was another major move with our other coordinator, defensive coordinator, Joe Whit Jr. also moves on the Cowboys informant. After how these defenses win, I'm convinced that he this is the Cowboys guy in house. Look, again, with him, I will sit here and put out the disclaimer. You lose Will Harris on defense early, there goes your communication to secondary. You lose Dietrich Wise, there goes one of the guys that helped set the edge. You lose Javonte John Baptiste early. I mean, he lost, Dorrance Armstrong. He lost a number of pieces that they had from a year ago. Fowler obviously is out. He went somewhere else. So he had a lot less to work with. With that being said, this defense, how many years do I always say bend but don't break, Will? We're broken. This defense didn't look good. And later in the year it didn't look great at all. When Dan Quinn finally came in and took back the play calling, it looked decent. But what I think really frustrated me with Joe Whit Jr. is that we knew there was issues last year. We knew we were riding high off the excitement and the play of Jaden and that offense and everybody doing what they did. We knew there was issues, especially with that first play of the championship game where what's his name takes it 70 yards on us, Saquon Barkley. Mm-hmm. But again, you're just kind of hoping, I guess, against hope coming into this year that okay, maybe you can fix it. Maybe you get Amos in the draft. Samer still another year under his belt. Maybe Lattimore, I never had high hopes on him, but you felt like, hopefully he can change it. And nothing changed. It looked awful. It looked bad all the way through. Teams recognize, just like with the offense, they got film on them. We know if we exploit, get a running back or a fast tight end on Wagner, we can get open there. If we can get to the edge, run the ball, they didn't address that run defense. If we could just sit here and block up front, they don't have any pass rush, so we can pick apart that. Like, they saw these things. Luvu last year was a freak nasty. Was he second team All-Pro last year? And this year, there's times where he seemed absent. Now, he had an interview recently where he was talking about sometimes he had to play the role of somebody else because of injuries. He did what he could, but he wasn't able to play what he normally does. And teams realize if we can neutralize him, nobody else is going to give us pressure. Yeah. So I will give him that benefit, Joe Whit Jr., the benefit of the doubt on that. The injuries caused major holes in the defense, and they expose a lot of areas. We'll talk about Adam Peters, and you never want or no injuries are coming, but the depth was something we've talked about all season. With that being said, we looked awful on defense. We couldn't stop anybody. It was rough this season. So I'm not surprised that this happened. When we saw they took the play calling from him, we saw what happened. What are your thoughts on Joe Whit Jr.? Is this a good riddance situation, or is it, all things considered, he maybe needed to be an assistant?
Yeah, I mean, I think major disappointment is all I can think of with Joe Whit Jr. because he came from Dallas with Dan Quinn. They had so many takeaways in Dallas. That's what we were so excited about this hiring, that we were going to they were going to turn us into that Dallas defense. And we couldn't get any turnovers this season, and you kind of talk about, we were ripping on Kliff Kingsbury. Well, Kliff Kingsbury is the guy that got us to the NFC Championship game. Because how many points was scored in that Detroit game? How many touchdowns did we give up? I think the combined probably close to 70 points were scored in that game, in that division round game. I mean, because we kept scoring. This defense was not good year one. and there were some holes that we knew, and they weren't able to fix those holes at all for year 2, and it looked even worse at times. And it also just seemed like Joe Whit just didn't know what to do. They said, he goes to zone, he goes to man, he goes to this blitz, he goes to cover 0. He's trying everything, but he just does not. He just could not figure out how to get anything out of it. And when Dan Quinn took over, there were times when the defense playing 90% zone looked a little bit better. Now, we also didn't play some of the best quarterbacks during that time frame as well, so you got to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. But this also is on Dan Quinn. Like, you got to see this. If things aren't going very well in year 1, and we got by it, when things started not going well again in year 2, he held on to Whit too long. Mm-hmm. He needed to take the reins back, because Dan Quinn, you got your job because of defense, and you're letting your buddy out here hang you out to dry.
Yeah. Yeah, and you saw that, and I think you hit the nail on the head where it was you took too long, and there was times where you were just sitting here, like, you'd watch Joe Whit Jr.'s interview, and he seemed very disciplined, and we're gonna do it this way, and you're blah blah blah, and then it was kind of like, where is that on the field? Where's that fire? And it's to the point where we're seeing it, and we can address it. I get being loyal to your guy, Dan Quinn, but this does fall on you, because it is like. This is, like, to your point, this is what you do. You're a defensive guy. This is your wheelhouse, and you're just standing by and allowing this to happen. Right. That to me rubbed me the wrong way. So he tried to save face by taking the plays from Joe Whit Jr., but you should have done that a while ago. And look, I'll ask the same question I asked before. I told you of all the injuries and the things like that. Is there any kind of grace you can give him for that? I mean, it didn't matter who he had in. It didn't look good. And you said he kept trying this and he tried that. But, I mean, can there be any grace given for those injuries?
So here's the thing. Is Joe Whit going to go get interviews to be a defensive coordinator outside of DC now?
No.
And if the answer is no, then it may be that he may be a better position coach.
Yeah.
And there are guys who have a long career doing that, and it can be very successful. And, we got a guy in-house right now, Anthony Lynn, who's been an offense coordinator. He's been a head coach, kind of got robbed of that one in San Diego. But he's also had some very successful, times as a running backs coach. So it's not that he can't have a very successful career. Maybe defensive coordinator is not up his alley.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. When I first heard that Joe Whit Jr. was coming to be our DC, I thought it was a case of Dan Quinn saying, hey, you're my buddy. You worked with me here. I'll be head coach. I'll give you this shot. And I was all for that. That's great. Great. You're being loyal to your guy. But coming from the perspective where we're sitting at, it's like, no, I don't want that. Don't bring in your guy. Bring in the best guy. And to let him stay as long as he did, it seemed like more of a loyalty thing to him. And I think you're right. I think, maybe he's a good coordinator somewhere else. Maybe he gets on somebody else's staff. He'll be fine. But it didn't look good in any way, shape,
I'll say this. I hadn't heard of Joe Whit Jr. before.
Never.
He became our defensive coordinator.
No.
So, whereas there are other times when we're naming offensive guys, and it's a little bit easier, but, everybody knew of the name Al Harris in Dallas.
Right.
I don't think anyone really knew about Joe Whit Jr. So I was excited saying, like, well, if this is who Dan Quinn has taken, I believe this must be a guy that he is saying he's ready to take over. And that may just not have been the case.
No, it wasn't. So you mentioned Harris out of Dallas. Obviously, Lynn has played, coached and done a number of different things. Is there any other names that you're thinking about that could potentially come in, or is this a situation where DC maybe DQ maybe promote somebody in-house, but still kind of holds the reins as defense?
Yeah, well, for starters, he didn't answer the question about is he going to continue calling plays in 2026. Yeah. Now, I think part of what they wanted to talk about in that press conference is 2025, and they did not want to talk about 2026, and so that could be a reason for it. As we went on air here, it was reported that we have requested to interview Patrick Graham of the Raiders. He was their defensive coordinator. That doesn't excite me.
Not at all.
One bit. How about a big old no on that one?
I was about to say, our backups put 41 up on them. What do we know?
That's what I'm saying.
No, not at all.
There's a name. There are two names out that I really like, and then there's another name that actually I should really like more. So I'm gonna give you some three names on defense, and they're all established. The first guy, and two of them have ties to Dan Quinn, so shocker. The guy that I think might be the best candidate is going to be Jeff Ulbrich of the Falcons, because he was not only he was the defensive coordinator of the Falcons this past year, and their defense was pretty darn good. Their pass rush was stellar. If you go look at, we talked about, was it James Pierce? He had about 8 sacks. Not too bad with your second first-round pick.
Right.
And maybe Ulbrich can be the one to say, hey, listen, this is how we can build. This is the type of players we need through free agency in the draft to build this defense to be successful. He also was the Jets defensive coordinator from 21 to 24.
Okay.
I seem to believe that the Jets built themselves a little bit of a decent defense there, getting guys like Sauce. I believe they had the Duke Johnson, a couple other guys. Bryce Huff come from the Jets and Philly to then, so I feel like he's been around some. Nate, don't jump the gun. So I feel like Ulbrich has been around some pretty successful defenses, and that part really excites me. And he coached linebackers for Dan Quinn with the Falcons, 2015 to 2019. So there's a connection. There's a trust there. As you can see with Joe Whit, they're clearly, Quinn wants people that trust. The other guy that has worked with Quinn in the past has been another guy from Atlanta, Raheem Morris.
Okay.
He's bounced around a little bit. He's very, very popular with players.
Mm-hmm.
He became a head coach twice because of his jobs as defensive coordinators. I think you bring a little bit of stability there, someone who's done it before, someone that can, the players are really going to like. The other name that is not being mentioned, and I think it has to do with the fact that there are no connections to Dan Quinn on this, but I love Jonathan Gannon. As Nate listed. He got his head coaching job in Arizona because of what he did in Philly. And boy, look at that defense. Now, Fangio elevated it even more. Fangio is a better defense coordinator than Gannon. But Gannon's a talent. And I would love to have him on the staff. But for right now, I think Jeff Ulbrich is my clubhouse leader. That's who I would like to see because of the Quinn connections and the fact that he's been around some very successful defense to kind of say, this is what we need.
Oh, yeah. A lot of those names are good. I like Ulbrich at DC, but I like getting Raheem Morris somewhere in-house. And I know you and I have discussed him, maybe not, obviously not as our head coach, but he's one of those guys, to your point, that the players really like. He's one of those guys in Atlanta. Those guys really kind of gravitate towards him, even though he didn't necessarily have that success. I personally would like to bring in somebody like that, somebody that's, talking about building a culture in Washington, something like that.
Raheem Morris also went 8-9 2 years in a row in Atlanta. Was he really not successful?
Yeah.
He kind of got cut a little early here. I almost feel the first time with the Bucs he might have shown that he wasn't quite ready for it, but I don't know, Atlanta, they might have cut him loose a little early.
I think they did, because at the end of the day, there was a 3-way tie for the division lead, for the division title, and Carolina won it.
Penix was out, and who's to say? I think the big thing there, I'm wondering, because I know what Anthony's probably long moved on to other things. But I just kind of wonder, what's the feeling there with Penix? Was Raheem all in on it too? Was it the general? If it was the two of them, then yeah, very well, that may be why Arthur Blank is ticked and said, "Well, you're both gone because of this." Or was it the general manager who made that decision, and Raheem's got to go along with it? Because and especially now he's got his other injury. I think what Ben was saying, that Kliff should go to Atlanta. I don't think Penix is the type of quarterback that works with Kliff. And now that he's going to have another ACL recovery, I don't know if Penix is going to ever be able to scramble.
No, he's not going to have the wheels. And he didn't have, he wasn't speedy, before.
Right.
But he's not going to have the wheels now with those two injuries. And to your point, Kliff definitely needs some wheels. And if Penix has injuries, we know Kirk ain't doing it. He ain't running anywhere. So You know what I mean? So yeah, that's going to be interesting. But obviously, Cowboys, Al Harris, and a lot of people in Washington have talked about, what happens there. We love him, but yeah, it's up in the air.
With Al Harris, it's kind of interesting. I think I heard Ben Standing say like there may not be an interest in him being a play caller. That he may like coaching his DBs, coaching the defense, and he may not have interest in doing that type of stuff.
Yeah,
because his name is not circulating everywhere.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, but only time will tell. This is very early on in the process, even though we do want to get coaches so that we can get them in the system, talking to the guys and whatnot. But only time will tell on this. I'm just going to keep this thing going really quickly. Nate, you alluded to it a little bit earlier. We did want to also talk about, as we talk about the coaches, we want to talk about a little bit of the roster. And after 2 years with Adam Peters, the roster, it's left us wanting. There's definitely some holes that were not addressed. Obviously, Will and I joked that they go after the things that we thought they needed a year later. 2 years ago, we said O-line, O-line, O-line. They went with some secondary pieces, obviously quarterback. This year, they go with the O-line pieces. So, Will, I mean, let's talk about kind of what Adam Peters did. I'll focus more on just this last year and what he brought back. Obviously, you re-sign Wagner, which is key for the defense. You re-sign Ertz, who's big help on offense, and Tressway, my guy, the GOAT, obviously locks down our special teams. You bring in guys like Javon Kinlaw to help with the defense. Obviously, Dietrich Wise, Will Harris, and Jonathan Jones in the secondary. You get the two big moves that everybody was kind of clamoring about with Debo and Laramie Tunsil. And these are all kind of position starters and guys that are going to get serious playing time. But one of the things that we had a real issue with, we talked about it last year and again this year, was depth. We did not feel like they truly addressed depth. Again, the theme is with the injuries that obviously played a major role, but it also shined a spotlight on the fact that we don't have quality players coming in once our stars go down. So it's where it's almost like we're paper thin, like a paper lion. You know what I mean? Like, and so I'll bring it to you. With the draft, and I know it's 2 years. We've had success a year ago. This year, obviously, we struggled. We've seen how Adam Peters did with the whole Terry conversation. I was talking about it all off season. What do you think of his moves thus far with the roster, and kind of what does he need to do going forward?
I mean, I think that Adam Peters has had more hits than he's had misses in his time as general manager, but he's had some pretty big misses that stand out a lot. I also think that he recognizes this is a really important offseason, and I'm hoping that the approach that he took the first 2 years, which was fairly conservative with his contracts and his spending overall, I'm hoping that he recognizes the need to, like, he's got to get at it right after it right now.
Yeah.
And that part kind of changes a little bit, or he makes some bigger splash moves or bigger impact moves. He did really well the first year. I mean, it came up with the phrase, let Adam cook, because of the success that he had. I mean, he nailed it with bringing in Frankie Louvu and Dorrance Armstrong on 3-year deals at around in the $30 million, total. So, he brought in some impact guys for not a lot of money. He didn't overspend. He found Zach Ertz on the cheap. He got Bobby Wagner in here. Jeremy Chin came in. Noah Igbenogany. Everything he brought in was working really well. And in the draft, he did, fairly well. Obviously, JD5, did that. And then Brandon Coleman played pretty well as a third round rookie. But there was some misses in 2024. And there's some, and this is where we talk about some of his misses can actually be slightly magnified more, which is where I think now that we're getting a chance to evaluate it, we're kind of getting a little nervous. So I'll start off just going, and I'm just going to stop at 2024, kind of give you a chance to weigh some thoughts here. The very first one is the Marshawn Lattimore trade. You know, he identified that we had a hole at corner.
Yeah.
We were not going, you know, we were in a situation where we were competing. They probably were doing better than we thought. It's almost like these 2 years were inverses of what they were supposed to be. I don't think the team really thought we'd have that type of instant success. And it was like, oh, shoot. Well, our corners are not doing it. He ain't doing it. And Forbes is getting stiff-armed by everybody out there. So we have to upgrade this corner position. And we all know it didn't work out with Marshawn Lattimore, and we ended up giving a lot away as a result of it. His other draft picks have kind of not made big impacts. And not only have they not made big impacts, but other players that we could have drafted have, even at some similar positions. You know, Johnny Newton has not progressed to the point where you would say he should start in year 3. That's really concerning, that if in your 3rd year you're not plugging in a second-round pick to say he should be a starter. In the second to last game of the season, I think it was against Dallas, he had, I think, like 2 sacks. 3 sacks. But he also was graded below 50% in his effectiveness because he can't play the run at all. He's undersized, you know, and so he's kind of this one-trick pony out there, you know. So that's not really going very well. You know, Ben Sinnott, yes, he's been behind a guy like Zach Ertz, but he's also not Zach Ertz. He's not that type of player. Maybe he's a hybrid of Bates and Ertz, but it's like you just haven't gotten much out of him. You know, Luke got hurt this year when he was starting to come on, so he's still a incomplete, you know, type of draft pick. But I'm going to list some names that they could have drafted instead of these guys, and it's going to hurt. Okay, Braden Fisk of the Rams from Florida State.
Yeah.
Cooper DeJean.
That's what I wanted.
The spot that we could have picked him up at. A.D. Mitchell. Didn't he go to the Jets and make some plays?
I think so.
Look about the Roger Rosengarten. We kept talking about him. What if you had gotten him instead of Coleman? You know, if you had gotten him instead of Coleman, did you need to draft Josh Connerly? Could you have been going after Jahad Campbell or somebody else at that time? Cooper Beebe. If you look at year 2, would you rather have Cooper Beebe at your left guard, or would you rather have Brandon Coleman, who was our backup?
Right.
You know, Peyton Wilson, a linebacker we loved, coming out of North Carolina State.
Yeah.
We picked Luke McCaffrey instead. We weren't able to get Peyton Wilson, I believe. No, he came before. Sorry, he was drafted before. So he was part of that group of second-round picks that we didn't get. Wilson got drafted in the 3rd round. Troy Franklin and Theo Johnson are guys in year 2 who have had better seasons than Luke McCaffrey has. You know, so there are some names out there to say it. You know, Adam Peters has missed on some things, and it's slightly concerning. So I'm gonna kind of stop. I've been talking a lot. What do you think about that? What's your thoughts on what he's been doing so far, or his first year bringing in some players?
First of all, you naming some of those names just gave me PTSD. Because I know, I mean, Rosengarten, DeJean, like a number of those guys you and I had on our draft boards, and to have them available, I didn't even realize Fisk was still there because he's a monster on that D-line. But to think we had them there, and I remember because we even traded back in one of those drafts and still missed on Cooper DeJean. So look, that to me, it was somewhat of a concern. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. You see something that you want and you're going in that certain direction. And hindsight is always 20/20, but still, you had an opportunity to get some key pieces to the puzzle. When Cooper was out there, we needed secondary. That would have been a huge move. Talk about Peyton Wilson. You want a guy this guy was led the NC State tackles, I think 2 years in a row, was a captain. You know, consummate, you know, All-American. This guy was out there dominating. I'm a North Carolina guy, and I was still rooting, you know, NC State. I mean, I was all about getting these guys. So there was a couple positions that you really look at where you're like, if we would have picked that, these are the natural progressions from the guys that we have.
Yes.
And it's almost like they went a different direction to almost say, hey, you know, we're not challenging you for your spot or something. It was just weird that they didn't make the moves that they made. And then the second part about that is you got the guys that you supposedly wanted, So where's the growth? Where's the development between these guys? You know what I mean? Because you got your guys, you were happy with this draft. So does that mean there's something going on in house? Like what are we doing there? So for me, it was very frustrating because I remember going back and talking to you that draft night and or draft weekend and just looking at just like why are we passing on these guys? Why do we like? It was almost, I'm not gonna say it was Ron Rivera-esque because we did get good players and they did hit on some, but on some of those picks, like, and I know you'll talk about this year, Kane Madrano, where you're sitting here like, okay, yeah, you like it because there's a connection to him, Kenyon Jr., but is this the guy that we really think is going to move up into this spot? Like, is he going to be your next after Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu are gone?
Right.
So it does make you question. And then shout out to our guy Ab, who it does kind of beg you to kind of think that maybe they're in this spot where it's like, oh, we know better than you, so we're just going to sit here and just do what we think is. And it's kind of like, do you not see how these guys played last year? Like, maybe they don't fit in your system or whatever, but I'm sure you can find a spot for them. But I don't know. That, to me, obviously, there's lots on the coaches, but to me, that's his eyes. So we can let him cook on one side, but then on the other side, I think we do need to address some of these moves, and we'll see what happens this year in the draft. But we can't just look at the Jaden Daniels move or the Josh Connerly and say, oh, he's been dominant, because the rest of that stuff has not hit.
Right. Well, the concern is a little bit. So Adam Peters learned in New England, Denver, maybe it was Denver, New England, and then San Francisco. Well, two of those spots, those teams have been established. So you have the luxury to be a little bit stingy to say, I'm offering you this. Oh, you don't want to take it? Find somewhere else to go.
Yes.
We're not in that situation. You're building a roster here. And when we get to 2025 and some of the we're criticizing him with some of the lack of depth, it may be a situation where, let's look at the fact that Jeremy Chin performed pretty darn well for us in 2024, and we let him go for like 2 years, $11 million.
Right.
2 years, $12 million. We offered him 1 year, $5 million the year before. We're talking, we let Olamide Zaccheaus go sign with the Bears for $1.14 million, $1.4 million, something like that. Well,
right.
Why, when we're getting into hundreds of thousands of dollars, why are we drawing lines in the sand here?
Right.
I fully believe I will give Adam Peters a pass right now and say I'm excited to see what he does in 2026. Because this is an important year for him too, because that cupboard was bare with what Ron and his team missed. How many first, second, third round picks are no longer with the team? How many doggone first round picks are not with the Commanders that were drafted as Commanders? You're talking Jamin Davis. You're talking Jahan Dotson. You're looking at Forbes. The three in a row. Like, those are major position groups. At least you can say with the first round picks that Peters has made, they've hit.
Right.
And those are impact players that you have to get with your first round pick. So there is you got to give him some patience on what he's been building. But I think it's also important to point out some spots where, like, what are you all thinking here? So we get to free agency. I love the fact that you mentioned the two trades, because I left that stuff out there. And I think, the Tunsil and Debo trades, we all can agree were huge hits. Huge hits. And especially on Debo, a tremendous value to give up a 5th round pick to get Debo.
Number two wide receiver?
Yes. Wait a minute.
Is he your number 2 wide receiver?
Not in 2026, but he was in 2025. Yeah.
Because he had to be.
Right. And the fact that you never really had a chance to see that offense come together, it's disappointing. But a 5th round pick for a number 2 wide receiver is a pretty darn good return on the investment. The idea behind the defensive line was, let's get bigger so we don't get pushed around as much. So Johnny Newton doesn't get shoved back, and Dante Fowler doesn't get pushed back, and then Saquon Barkley goes running by. So you brought in a Javon Kinlaw and a Dietrich Wise. Well, Wise got hurt, so you can't go there. I thought Kinlaw played fairly decent this season, but our run defense was no better in 2025 as it was in 2024.
That was worse.
So I don't know if that's injury wise, Now, I do think Jacob Martin and Von Miller did show out to be something, but we also picked up Von Miller in August, so like you didn't address your edge position at all. And at the draft, I thought, there were some good picks there. Josh Connerly, in the last 8 games of the season, Connerly may have given up 2 sacks.
Okay.
In the beginning of the season, the first 8 games, especially his first 4 games, he had given up like 4 to 6. Like he was kind of struggling in the beginning. He also was going against Micah Parsons. So come on now.
Right. He gave up 2 to Burns in the first week, and I don't even think they were on him.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, that's he's up against Thibodeau, Burns, and then what's his name, Abdul Carter, and then next week you go against Micah Parsons. Like, come on now, that's a welcome to the league here. Type move. So Connerly seems to be like they've entrenched him pretty well. Amos looked like he was making some plays there at cornerback before he got hurt. Jalen Land looked like he showed some things as a kick returner. So I don't think they did so bad in the draft there. But if you also, there's a couple of names that they could have thought of if they went differently. Harold Fannin balled out for the Browns. Now that we're looking at how we need to be replacing Zach Ertz, he balled out.
Yeah,
we all laughed at this guy, but Isaac Tesla looks to be pretty darn good in Detroit, and he's a big body and he can make some plays. And the guy we like that, maybe if you had gone a different direction in round 2, you could have gotten this guy in round 3. By the end of the season, Siobhan Ravel was starting in Dallas.
You called him out. You were talking about him.
It's just there are some, and instead we brought in besides some of the guys that did some well, Jonathan Jones, was brought in to get some meaningful minutes. What happened to Noah I this season? We never really addressed the edge position for anything that's going to scare people, and our running back and linebacker situations. I mean, there wasn't the depth, there wasn't much there on linebacker, and we talked earlier who at running back concerns you going into the season as an opposing defense.
Right.
So it kind of feels like 2025 was some good hits with trades and some draft picks, but really struggled in free agency.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And then I think also you have to think about in-house. So we talk about him re-signing the Wagners, the Ertzes, and the Tressways, and that's great. We're glad, they did that. But we also know their limitations, whatever. When you guys came to Washington, Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, and you did your pressers, there was a guy in the front row, and his name was Terry McLaurin. And he was right there with you guys, shaking your hands. He was right there, all about you guys being in-house. The beginning of this season, or an off season, when we had to deal with that whole contract issue, and you were talking about pinching pennies and kind of like, oh, well, we're not going to pay that much, or we'll see. That, I think, was bigger than the money. We know what Kliff said. I need him on the grass. I need to see him in the offense so we can work around that. That, to me, was it kind of put a dark cloud over the season, but it also kind of took its toll, because what you're doing now is it's not about somebody getting their money. It's about, like you said, I got the cards, I got the leverage. If you don't want to, we're gonna go on without you if you don't play. If you don't want to, you know what I mean? Pushing it to the last minute. That doesn't seem like a team that's sitting here saying, let's get our guys in and let's make this run for the Super Bowl. That seems like we already won the Super Bowl, and it's like, oh, we can get anybody to run in this. It really kind of, I think, really kind of darkened the mood in everything, because he is your guy. He is Washington. He is the commander. And to have that with him, and some people say it was him, and some people say it was Adam Peters. You got to make that move, and you have to do it in not the way that it was done this offseason, where it was you had him talking to the media, I want to be a part of Washington, I love it, yada, yada, yada. But this should have already been done. And the media is saying, well, he wants this, and we're going to sit there. No, we didn't need to do that. One of the things we praised all offseason last year was we didn't hear anything in the offseason about Adam Peters talking, Dan Quinn talking, none of that stuff. We were focused, and we saw what happened. This whole offseason, this training camp, surrounded by that whole Terry McLaurin thing. And I think, along with a lot of the other things, it just played such a detrimental role to the whole season, just because this is your guy. And if they're going to treat your guy the guy that is selfless, that will lay his body on the line for this team, how will they treat you? And I think that's something that it might be something for a little later down the line, but it is something where it's kind of like, listen, there's players that you can kind of, finagle money with and everything like that. But if this is your leader, if this is your guy, you got to work this thing out, because it's more for optics than anything else. So I think that's where I would look at Adam Peters like, okay, I don't know if you played that well, but at the same time, to your point, there has been hits. It has been a lot better than a lot better than what we've had in the past, and you can see certain things building for the future. But depth, needs to get addressed, and you got to take care of your guys. You got to, and not this whole, they have to kiss the ring thing. They got to come to me. No, we got to be working together, and it has to make it look good. Just like where they didn't sit there and say anything negative about Kliff, and Kliff didn't have anything negative to say in house. We need Adam Peters. We need you to be getting our guy in, and we're not going just back and forth in the media. That really messed with me personally, but also I think it messed with kind of how things look going into the season, and I think that definitely hurt us.
Well, I think when you and I were talking, and Ab did a fantastic job this offseason of talking about the numbers when it came to the Terry move, and you and I kind of brushed it aside because we said we don't care. This is bigger than the numbers, right. And that's I think this is where we talk about was Adam Peters going too much, saying this is your value. You see these numbers, you see who you actually are. This is your value. But he was missing the bigger picture of what Terry means to this franchise, what Terry means to the fan. Well, I know you got to build a roster, but what Terry means to this team, to the players, to the franchise. Right. And we were worried about a couple $1 million, but yet we can go sign Von Miller for $8 million a year.
Right.
Like that part is where it's hard to swallow these types of decisions. Only thing I'm gonna push back about the whole we don't have depth thing. I got something even bigger that we don't have. On offense, you got Jaden, you got Terry. Name someone on defense that is a playmaker. That it took too long.
Yes,
you should
take
you
you
that long. And so even more so than having depth, we need playmakers.
Yeah.
And going into this season, like I understand in 2025, when you go to the NFC Championship, you're not going to go into the offseason saying, all right, well, we gotta blow this all up and figure things out. So I get the idea that they're like, well, we do want to bring back Bobby. He was a really important part of this team. We do want to bring back Zach Ertz. He was a really important part of this. And I'm not saying the fact that they brought those two guys back is the reason why we didn't win, but they didn't bring enough around to make it. And this is probably what Ab's biggest complaint was. It's like, what did we do at corner? We waited till the draft to address it. And we went with Marshawn Lattimore, who flopped. What did we do at edge? We brought in no pass rushers, except for a 36-year-old guy who says, I'm only supposed to be doing this every 3 downs. I'm not supposed to be out there that much here. And so that is the part where you can say, they did not do enough to bring this team, to gear this team up for success. They almost just sort of said, rinse, repeat, let's try again.
It's exactly what it seemed like. I'm obviously, this is exactly what it seemed like. We got it. It worked for us last year. We don't need to change anything. And that was frustrating. And I, maybe I'm being a little bit of a stretch because yes, they did bring in some moves, the Debos, the Laramie Tunsil's, Will Harris. They did bring in some pieces to the puzzle, but the adjustments, they don't seem like they adjusted. They don't seem like there was a number of things that were kind of, you saw it kind of as the season went. Obviously the injuries played a part, but to Ab's point, to the point we've all been making, there was, with each pick, you're just sitting there like, okay, but we need this. Like, we need a defense. We need more of a D-line. We need somebody that's going to come in and replace Bobby eventually. Like, we need to really be training these guys up in the secondary. We've tried, but you know how I felt about Lattimore. I for the life of me last year when we traded for him, I could not understand why a team that is stripping it to the studs, they are tearing it all down with the New Orleans Saints. why you would give up your quote unquote star corner. What I realize is because A, he's injury prone, and B, he's more handsy than anything else. And we what we see now is all we saw before was really him getting in the face of certain people, obviously getting in fights with Evans and whatnot from Tampa Bay. And he is that. He's a talker. He's a fighter. He's everything. But he don't have the skill to go along with that.
Can't back it up.
Right. And on top of the fact that, the best ability is availability. And last year we traded for him. And then how long did it take until he finally got into the season? Like 5 games till he finally got in there. And then obviously, unfortunately, this year he gets hurt. But even when he was in, I think, matter of fact, I think there was a stat that said he was the second. He was second leading penalty getter on the team. And he was out nearly half the season.
I would bet he led the league in penalties for those first 8 games. He was averaging 2 to 3 a game.
It was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough, especially when we went up against those big name receivers, the Pickens, the what's it called, the Neighbors, the AJ Browns, and that's just our division. We're not even talking about going and playing elsewhere and whatnot. So look, there is work to do. There is stuff that we can build on, yes. But to your point, we need to go into this offseason and we really need to address some of these holes. We need to address the direction we're going to make. But I also think we got to get a head coach or a coordinator. I mean, we got to get coordinators for these because they're going to want their guys. You know what I mean? Now, who knows how this whole thing's going to play out when they're coming in and they're having their say and everything like that. But I am willing to give Peters benefit of the doubt and say you can still do that. I know you've got it. I see it on here, but let's play things the right way. Let's not, pinching pennies and withholding, and doing all that with guys, especially guys that we need on the squad. So
I agree. I mean, I think you have to, if you're being honest, you have to look at, Luvu, Armstrong, Ertz, Wagner, JD5. Big hits. You got to look at Tunsil and Debo as big hits in the decisions that they made. Connerly, Amos. But then so that's clearly better than what we had in the previous regime.
Very true.
Way more improved.
100%.
And so, I mean, I'm kind of judging it like, he's like 70-30 in how he's doing, maybe 65-35. But like you said, they need to take an evaluation of what they've missed and why have they missed? What were they factoring in? Because they've had some really good hits that have made some big strides on our team, but we're year 3 is loading, and we have to load up if we're gonna do anything. So it's a big year for Adam Peters as well.
Oh yeah. So there's a lot of people that got a lot of attention on them. Dan Quinn being one, Adam Peters being another. Year 3, we've known just how high up we can potentially go, but we've also seen again how far we can fall. So, hey, Nate was talking about the schedule. We should get a fairly favorable schedule. I know I shared that with you.
Oh, you did? I don't have it. Yeah.
I don't have those right now.
I think it's still going to look pretty tough. We won't be as difficult as this year. But, I mean, I was looking at some of it. We still got to play the NFC North. I mean, I think we do get a NFC South opponent, so that's always nice.
I know we get Atlanta.
That's like the ACC that we get to go play. So
wow! What is the SEC's bowl record this year?
Who cares about can you name bowls that people have played in?
One person that cares about bowls? Your son, Patrick. He's watching the replays of the Humanitarian Bowl in the Pop. I love that. I love it. Oh my goodness! To your point. Hey, look. I'm excited. Week 1 of the off season is here. We're gonna get
too much drama, Sean. It's too much drama for week 1. That's all I'm gonna say.
Hey, it's always. Hey, look, we know we're used to this. This is when we shine in the off season.
Right.
All right. So hopefully, we know they can get it done. Hopefully they pull it out. I'm really eager to see what coordinators we get. What are some names that are coming potentially that we're interviewing to see. You said it to me off camera. I don't know if we said it online. Did you see if it was official, the signing of wide receiver?
Nick Nash? Yeah, that was
Nash?
yesterday. That's yesterday.
Oh, yes.
You can celebrate.
San Jose State alum Nick Nash, who led the college football world 2 years ago, I believe, in receptions and I believe receiving touchdowns. So he was one guy I wanted going into this past draft. And the other guy was Harold Fannin Jr. that Will talked about earlier. So definitely glad we got him. Let's see how he works with a Jaden Daniels. Let's see what he can do with the full off season under the belt. It's going to be interesting. So I'm excited for that.
This. I can't wait to write this in the college chat. Per an ESPN source, Louisville quarterback Deuce Adams will be visiting Michigan, Wisconsin, and James Madison in the next coming days.
JMU, they on the rise, baby. Let's go. Go Dukes. Didn't they just get a top tier wide receiver? JMU?
Well, they got a guy from LSU. I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't.
Well, let's go Dukes. Let's go Dukes. I think they just scored another touchdown on my Tar Heels.
Right.
Damn.
Oh, and there you go. Okay, so that's not a bad haul. I don't know if he's good, but Trey Young to the Wizards for C.J. McCollum and Corey Kispert.
Oh, wow. Trey Young from Atlanta. Now, I will say C.J. McCollum is my guy, man. That dude's automatic. But
shout out to Trey. He was never going to be there, though. I'm pretty sure when he got traded, he knew he was never staying in D.C.
Yeah. And I know he's happy because he's off that. I don't think we've won 10 games this year. I think we're like 7-36 or something. Like it's rough. It's ugly. Right. But those tickets are cheap. I'll tell you that much. Might have to go to a game.
Yes. I know someone you should invite to a game. Okay, we're live.
Yeah. I might have to. We might have to work that thing out.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you off camera. I'll talk to you. All right, look, ladies and gentlemen, we gotta head out of here. It is 10 o'clock Eastern time. We appreciate you joining us here on Washington Football Weekly. The season is done. Another 4-13 year, but you know what? Life in NFL and Washington is like a roller coaster. Some seasons you go up, some seasons you go down. But next season, ladies and gentlemen, watch out.
Here we go.
Watch out. Going up, baby. Going up. So look, for my guy, South Carolina's finest, Will Kramer, it's your boy, Sean Spencer. We appreciate y'all being here with us. And hey, we'll see you guys next time. Peace, people.
Welcome to Washington Football Week with your host, one half of that dynamic duo, Sean Spencer, and South Carolina's finest, Will Kramer.
Don't play us if you're undefeated.
Where we celebrate past success while looking to a bright future. There's a youth movement in Washington, and they're ready to take the reins. Led by Myers.
Play aggressive.
It's a new day. New dawn. No longer the laughing stock. It's time to take them.